Hi everybody, welcome back to the Gallowgateshots YouTube channel and podcast. We are back with another match preview. After the victories of last week for those three games, we are now turning our attention to the weekend's away fixture against Aston Villa. I'm Scott, I'm your host for this one, and this week I am joined by Daryl and Joe. Joe, how are you, my friend?
Good evening, Scott. Doing very well, mate. Doing very well, thanks. Fantastic week for the Toon. 5 wins in a row now, which is absolutely insane. It feels like we've finally got our shooting boots back on, and it's looking really exciting for the last sort of portion of the season. So yeah, looking forward to doing this one with you lads.
Yes, and Daryl, how are you? Have you recovered after West Ham yet?
Yes, I fully recovered from that. Was really jealous of everybody who got to go down to Brentford on Saturday. I really would have liked to have been there, but you know, work comes first. Unfortunately, these days you got to earn your money before you can go and spend it all. But yeah, absolutely top of the world. And been enjoying like Joe says there. It's 15 points from 15 available. Can't complain, can you? And hopefully get another 6 before we get to a tough game.
Yeah, and it will be a tough game this weekend. But before we get into all of that, as always, every single week, the Gallowgateshots match preview is brought to you by Magpin. Magpin are the go-to site for high-quality, unofficial enamel pin badges of Newcastle players, legends, and retro kits. Their website, if you haven't already been on there, is magpinbadges.bigcartel.com. So as I mentioned, it's a weekend early kickoff. It's 12:30. It's live on BT Sports for you lovely, lovely people in the UK. I'll have it on Viaplay if anyone's interested. Probably not. Villa have been doing pretty decent since the appointment of Emery. Out of the last 5, they've won 4, and the other one was a draw. So they're going pretty well. They've got a good little run going on, Daryl. Currently sixth in the league with 47 points. That's a 14 wins, 5 draws, and 11 defeats. And they have a +1 goal difference. Given all of that, as I always do, are you confident for this one?
Do you know what it is, Scott? It's very hard not to be, considering where we've come from in the last few games. We've just talked about the 5 wins on the bounce there. Some really tough games in between that and tough spells within those games. As much as we beat West Ham 5-1, we did have that tough spell after going 2-0 up where Eddie Howe was probably the most angry I've ever seen him to date. And then we had that really turgid first half down at Brentford where we just looked absolutely shattered from the week's adventures before. And we've shown the resilience now. We've got options coming off the bench. We're a lot stronger than we were. So as much as it is going to be a tough game, can't fault that. The form that Villa are in. It's very interesting. I'm sure we'll get onto it when we start to maybe talk about both managers and how they've impacted their clubs. But yeah, 2 informed teams going head to head. I mean, it's going to be a great game to watch, I think.
Yeah, it should be a great one for the neutrals. Probably maybe it's not so much for us Newcastle fans, and maybe it's not so much for the Villa fans either. Joe, there's 2 ducts to be broken here. We've got our 5 games in a row and Villa's 4 games in a row. Given their style of play, and I'm just going to read out again. I've been back on that website that I was on last week. I've been on whoscored.com, I think it is. And Villa's style of play, according to whoscored.com, is they like to play long shots. They like to attack down the left. They like to play the offside trap, but they also like to keep possession in their own half. And now that was the one for me that stuck out as well. We could maybe exploit them a little bit, given our pressing game. Do you think, given that style of play, there's some benefits that we can look at from kind of how we play and maybe not have to adapt as much?
Yeah, I think our pressing is going to be absolutely crucial in this one. I was looking at some of the highlights from the last few games, and you're right, they've been quite trigger happy when it comes to long shots. I think McGinn scored an absolute screamer quite recently, and it shows confidence in a side that has had an absolute resurgence under Unai Emery. Their wing play as well has been quite positive. They're not shy taking on fullbacks, and obviously getting the balls into Watkins, who has been an absolute mountain against defenders recently and is obviously on a bit of a goal scoring streak. So yeah, them keeping possession in their own half, you're right. That's something that our pressing will definitely look to exploit. You've got the likes of obviously Joe Linton, Longstaff. I mean, I think Bruno is something like in the top 5% of players in Europe for take-ons completed. It's something like that. So those kind of stats are obviously going to be, massively in our favour. Their defence has been very rigid, and even the likes. I know I've taken the piss in the past, but even Tyrone Mings has been very solid for them. So they're not a defence that we can take lightly. Really, we can't take that for granted. We need to ensure that we're on top form with this. Whether that's Callum Wilson starting up top, whether that's Isak starting up top. But hey, look, I mean, Emery's done some absolute wonders with them. I think, whilst their resurgence hasn't been quite as dramatic as ours, it's certainly comparable in terms of where they were at the start of the season. Emery took over in October, and now they're fighting for Europe. They're a team that knows what they're doing, and for the most part has been very consistent in terms of their personnel. They've got a few injuries, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but definitely need to be careful with some of their star players like Watkins and Buendia and such.
Yeah, we'll talk about Emery in just now, Daryl. It's funny what a decent manager can do to a semi-decent or a fairly decent squad. We've seen it firsthand. People obviously thought our squad was dead and buried until Eddie Howe come over, and actually we haven't needed too many reinforcements when it comes to bringing in players. Obviously, we've made reinforcements, and obviously we've spent money, but the players that were currently at the club have all performed. And given the fact that Villa, on paper, have a very, very good squad. You could probably argue they have a better squad than we do in terms of individual brilliance and individual skill. It seems like all it's took us to get the right man in to unlock that. And they're a bit of a danger now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen ourselves firsthand the transformation of a number of players who were already at the club under Eddie Howe has just been absolutely phenomenal. We don't have to. Well, we could reel them off. Let's go with it. Joe Linton, Almiron, Alison Maxton. You could go on.
So you could for some, but not for...
Well, I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to name everybody. Come on. We haven't got that much time. But yeah, so, there's individual turnarounds in form that we've seen under Eddie Howe. And the same, I'm sure, without going into it deeply, will happen with Aston Villa as well under Unai Emery. We also have to really think, as much as we love Eddie Howe and we're absolutely mad over the moon that we've got him, when you go back to November 2021, Unai Emery was first pick, and it just all fell apart because of the way it came out. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't change that for the world. I love what we're doing under Eddie Howe, and I absolutely adore the bloke. He's done a fantastic job, and look where we're going. It doesn't take much to see where we're going with this. Makes you wonder what could have happened under Unai Emery. I still think he wouldn't have had as big an impact as Eddie Howe, and I think that to end up with Eddie Howe has been even better than Unai Emery. I think we're seeing Unai Emery do some great work down at Aston Villa now, and I'm sure that if his upturn in form with them keeps going the way it's going, they'll be us next season. They'll be like what we've been this season when it comes around to next season. He's really got that squad playing well. I think some of the squad really like the work that he's doing. You can tell that in the fact that they're now fully, they're playing for him really. They're playing for that shirt and for him and for their place. And it's going to be really interesting to see the two guys go head to head in a tactical battle. I almost think it's almost akin to how I used to see Rafa Benitez go into a tactical battle against the likes of a Pep Guardiola, even though back then it was a case of one squad was crap and one squad was world class, full of international superstars. This time it's going to be very evenly matched squads going in it, and it really will be a battle of tactics. And as we'll get onto it later, I think it could impact on the predictions as well.
Yeah, we'll touch on Villa's kind of strengths and weaknesses, Joe. Again, I've been on that website again. I'll not say it again because they're not paying me. So if you want more shout outs, you can get in touch with Chris and get a sponsorship deal. Although we'll never get rid of Magpin this season. So anyway, Aston Villa strengths according to that website, through balls and individual skill was all it had listed down, which I think might be a bit harsh on Villa if I'm being fair, but they do have a lot of individual players who can harm you. We've talked about Ollie Watkins. A few of them are injured. You got Coutinho, you got Kamara, and even Leon Bailey. You'd probably say are big losses to them. We'll come to them a bit later on. Turning on to their weaknesses, defending against long shots, defending set pieces, aerial duels, individual errors, and fouls in dangerous areas. I mean, that's music to my ears as a Newcastle fan in terms of what we do to teams, especially that defending set pieces and fouls in dangerous areas. We saw last season at St James's Park when they give that free kick to Kieran Trippier, what he did with it. Are you expecting a different Villa to what maybe those weaknesses are showing up there, or do you think it'll be very much that's kind of hit them on the nose?
That's a hard one to say because you can look at a lot of teams that have come up against us this season and they've kind of foregone their normal tactical game plans to shut up shop because they know that we love the press, we love the possession, and if they leave spaces open at the back, we're just going to absolutely rip them apart. However, as I alluded to before, Villa are a team that are on the rise and they are full of confidence. They especially being at home, they're gonna be full of confidence that they can beat us and take the game to us as the same way that we take the game to them. Now, thinking about long shots, is that what we like to do? I mean, I know that you have the likes of maybe Longstaff who occasionally like to, twat it from 30 yards out. And, it sometimes pays off with Share as well when he goes on his amazing little, darting runs in between getting concussions. He loves to think that he can smack a top corner, and occasionally it happens. However,
who doesn't love a Fabian Share adventure, eh?
Who doesn't love a Fabian Share amazing run? Has to happen at least a few times a game, doesn't it? But really, I think with Isak coming into the team, we've looked a lot more like a team that enjoys playing between the lines, getting in the space between the defenders and the midfielders, and using Isak as that sort of not a target man, but just using him to sort of hold the ball up a little bit and allow the others to get into play. And we seem to be a little bit more intricate in the passing, and it's working obviously. Set piece wise, however, we've had a lot of success. Kieran Trippier, I think recently, I'll be honest, has been a little bit hit and miss in terms of his deliveries for me, especially from corners. I think we can be doing a hell of a lot better with corners. Free kicks, though, especially when you get in particular positions, I think we are especially dangerous, and that's where we're going to be looking to get Isak on the end of those kind of balls. I still find it absolutely ridiculous that Botman hasn't scored for us yet, especially from a set piece. I mean, the lad is a man mountain, and I think he might be our only regular outfield player that hasn't scored so far this season. So I wouldn't mind, him breaking his duck there. And who knows? But I think there are definitely weaknesses to exploit. Where the thing is, our pressing is just relentless as well. We've got to break them down eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll turn to players, Daryl. I think we talk a lot about Alexander Isak and the current form he's in and how he's been playing, and obviously we've got other players as well. But Villa have their own little player in form, Ollie Watkins. He's currently on 12 goals for the season with 5 assists, and the 5 assists is the big number for me. Really, you're a striker, you probably expect to score between 10 and 15 goals a season if you're in a fairly decent squad. But to get the assists as well, is quite a big thing. Are you a fan of Ollie Watkins? What are your thoughts on him?
He's a nice little mobile striker who can, as we've seen, finish and get assists for his team. He's somebody who fits into that kind of system really well. You could almost say you would see him in a black and white shirt because he could fit into our system in that way as well. He's sort of not as tall or as sleek as an Alexander Isak, but he could certainly do a similar sort of job to him. I wouldn't really call him a target man as well.
Yeah.
But again, when to use it as a comparison, Callum Wilson hasn't quite got to 12 goals yet this season, but he's banging in a few assists this season as well. He's done it a few, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, we've got setting up Jacob Murphy earlier in the season, I think against Brentford at home. Setting up, who else has he set up? He set up Isak on Saturday against Brentford.
He also set him up against Fulham.
Yeah, absolutely. So he is getting that up as well. So again, it's those sorts of numbers that, as you say, Scott, will grab people's attention. And for Ollie Watkins, is perfectly suited to where he is at Aston Villa, and he is a major threat for us. And I think not for his physical presence, but because of his movement and the way he can get around the pitch. And even you could imagine, just picture it now. You could imagine him getting in behind a Fabian Schär or a Sven Botman on Saturday and causing a little bit of trouble. But again, it's the way we've been, as much as we've had a goal to concede in us in the last week or so, it's one of those things where if that back five sings, then nobody's getting past it. But yeah, Ollie Watkins, a big danger and certainly one that we need to be keeping an eye on, as well as Buendia. I think, is it on the left that Buendia plays?
I believe so.
Yes,
Yeah, although they may
indeed.
move that round
Okay.
because we'll move on to the
Yeah.
injuries now. Obviously, Joe, we talked about this just before off camera, but they've got a fair few injuries and a few recent ones as well, which might hinder
Do.
their momentum a little bit. Looking at Matty Cash, Kamara, Coutinho, Leon Bailey, and Jed Steer, who I think's been out for a bit longer. But those first four that are out there, I think, are pretty recent, and I think two of them were midweek injuries. There's some big names there to be out. Obviously, we've got our injuries as well in Miggy and Maxi, although we have seen Miggy back on the grass this week. He hasn't been visiting me. He's been out training. But but
Oh,
when
God.
it comes to the injuries for Villa, is well, we all know what Coutinho can do. Is that a big miss for them, do you think?
I think Bailey and Kamara are definitely, because when they've played with one up front, with Watkins just up front, they've sometimes used Kamara as that CDM role, but obviously him being injured kind of removes that option. However, they have had that Traore lad coming off the bench
Yep.
recently, and he scored a few times. Obviously, Bailey went off against Forest quite early on, and Traore got that goal, partially thanks
I
to
think he's their
John
second top
Shelby.
goal scorer behind Watkins as well, Traore.
Is he? Wow.
I think
Well, there you
so.
go. So
And,
it
well,
could
he's
it
on
could well
par
just
with
be a
Danny
straight
Ings,
swap.
who's no longer there. So,
Yeah.
he is by default.
Yeah, true. So I think it could just be a straight swap, replacing Bailey with Traore going into the match. You've got Buendia on the left, and then even though Cash is out on the right as the right back, Ashley Young has been coming in and doing quite a good job.
Yeah.
He's been providing some good through balls for Ramsey, etc. They've so they do have some strength and depth. So I think they've got a couple of options there, and having two up top, I mean, that's going to cause some major hassle for our centre backs. But then, you have one less in midfield. Where we're going to have three midfield. They have have two in the centre. Could play straight into our hands, especially when you got Longstaff making advanced runs down the right hand side to support the likes of Trippier and Murphy, or whoever does come in on the right hand side. I think that's definitely a weakness we can exploit.
Yeah, and obviously there's no guarantee they will go two up top either. I think they have played a
Yeah.
4-2-3-1, similar to how we play in kind of a formation wise in the past. Whether that was under Emery or not, I'm not sure. But I do remember them do that, and I think also I think against Chelsea when they went ahead, they almost had six in defence. It was like a 6-2-2 they were lining up as, just to shut up shop, but counter-attack, and it's they seem to hurt Chelsea a little bit there. Daryl, will obviously turn our attentions to Newcastle, being a Newcastle United fan channel. We've already talked about Miggy and Maxi being out of injuries. Given what happened at the weekend against Brentford, are those two being out still a little bit of a pain point for us, or do you think we've got over that a bit now, and we've got the players who can step up and step in?
A bit of both, to be honest, Scott. We've seen that the lads who've had to come in with those absentees of St Maximin and Almiron have really done a good job. Especially in the case of Jacob Murphy for a start. He came in as his direct replacement for Miggy, and we've even seen Anthony Gordon now getting a few bits and bobs when he's come on as well. He's setting up that goal at West Ham. Well, it was the chance that we mentioned in the last preview.
Yeah.
For the was it the Murphy chance, I think, or the St Maximin chance as it came to be. In the box, and he started that move off with a great defensive tackle there, and he only had a bit of a cameo on Saturday, and we've all seen the furore about the reaction that he had when he was subbed off in injury time. That comes with a bit of experience. Once he'll have had a word with him. It's all been done and dusted. I'm sure he'd be absolutely fine about it.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much at full time when he went over at the weekend. But yeah, so there is strength in depth there. In terms of we've seen St Maximin's been back in the oxygen tank on his Instagram. Whether or not that means he'll be ready for this weekend remains to be seen. Miggy on the grass is fantastic news, but I still don't think he'll be risked come Saturday. He could even be, if he really is making the progress that it looks like he's making, he could be on the bench, but you don't need to risk him. We don't need to. We've got that strength.
Exactly.
And like I say, we'll get onto it when we talk about how we think the team will line up, but I think there could be a couple of more changes from Saturday to come.
Yeah, well, let's move right on to that, Joe. I think one of the biggest things, obviously, with Villa liking to attack down the left, is maybe to bring in an ex-Villa player in Matty Target. He may be a better option, I think, than Dan Burn against Villa, just given their pace and what they're doing. But saying that, we've said that against West Ham, we said that against Brentford, and he coped very well. It's I think we say this every single week, but it's going to be a very hard choice for Eddie Howe to make on who gets that. And we all know Eddie Howe doesn't like to change a winning formula. So at the back, is it same as, or do we give Target a chance against his old knocking ground?
Yeah, we pretty much say this every week, don't we? Oh, is it the resurgence of Matty Target because he played 3 minutes against Man City? No, Eddie Howe's going to keep with the same back four he always does. And why not? Why not? Yeah, okay, Dan Burns had a couple of shaky games. I mean, West Ham, he wasn't great. I think Brentford, he was okay from what I remember. Maybe 1 or 2 parts, but all I remember is from that back four, Sven Botman going in like a steam train to concede a penalty.
Yeah.
All of our back four due a sloppy game now and again, but I mean, we're the best defense in the Premier League. And why would you change that with 9 games to go?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Eddie Howe thought that bringing ex-players in was a significant advantage, he would have brought on Ryan Fraser when we played Bournemouth, but he was lucky to make the bench at that point. Same with Callum Wilson.
Bournemouth under 21s, you mean?
Yeah, now he would. Yeah,
now,
exactly. Yeah. So no, Dan Burn sticks.
Good. Yeah, I agree. Like I say, I just have to ask these questions, otherwise we'd have no content to talk about. Daryl, in the middle of the park, we've got another dilemma, and it's another tricky one. I'll ask the same question, because why not? Do you keep it as is, or do you switch it up a little bit? Because the second half against Brentford, we moved Joe Linton in the middle, and we looked a lot more solid. Do you think you'll keep that as a formation, or do you think you'll go with how we started against Brentford?
I think he'll go back to his trusted formula. And I would also go on to mention, as I will in a few minutes, once we've talked about the midfield, going on to the front three as well. And that's what I think it'll be as well. But yeah, so in terms of that midfield three, I think, we'll have to remember that Brentford came at the end of a run where it was 3 games in 6 days. And I think after the exits of Man United and West Ham, Sean Longstaff, in his style of play and what he does for us in the team, was running on empty, wasn't he? And we saw that. He was really, really huffing and puffing, let's say, in that first half. And I think it was right that he was brought off at half time. And that, you know what it is? That formation change worked wonders. You can't deny it. But you have to remember as well, Eddie mentions it every time that it's brought up about bringing Isak and Wilson as a 2 together, that in the right scenario, the second half on Saturday was the perfect scenario for that. And that's why I don't think he'll start a game with them up front together. So in terms, just quickly stepping back there, that midfield three, I think it'll be back to Bruno, Joe Linton and Longstaff. In terms of the 3 across the front, I think he'll put Willock back out on the left if St Maximin's nowhere near fit. I think Isak will start in the middle, and then you'll have either Murphy. And I have a funny feeling he might try and give Gordon a chance from the start on Saturday, just maybe to make up for having to sub against Brentford on Saturday. But that right hand side probably is the one that I'm undecided on at the minute. But I think in terms of formation, it'll be back to 4-3-3, and it'll be back to Isaac up top with Wilson off the bench.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does with that front 3, Joe. Obviously, we saw what happened with Gordon. We'll not talk any more about that because I think enough has been said online by enough people that we don't need to talk about it anymore. But as Daryl said, if Eddie Howe lets Gordon start, could that possibly be seen as him kind of giving in to the reaction that Gordon gave? Or, some fans may see that, and some fans obviously won't, and I think a lot of us won't. But there will be a small part of the fan base who thinks, oh, well, he's kicked off, he's got in the team. Like, what does that show to other players? You know what I mean? It's kind of a weird one.
I know, yeah.
It's a weird one because it's you cannot win, basically. If he wants to start Gordon, and his plan was always to start Gordon, that little incident's just now put a little bit of kind of, not doubt in the mind, but just put a little asterisk on him starting, I think, at the weekend.
Yeah, and like anything in football, you could look at this from any number of different angles. But listen, right, these are professional footballers. You're not going to get in or out the team based on a tiny little tantrum from being subbed. And at the end of the day, the lad has been brought in by Eddie Howe to be part of the long-term future of this club and this team. You don't pay 44 million quid for a lad just to sit on the bench for the remainder of the season. I know Eddie Howe enjoys, if he can, to slowly integrate players in. Obviously, Bruno is a fine example of that. And I suppose Isak by default of him getting injured. But even then, when he was back up to fitness, he still brought him in incrementally.
Yep.
However, I think Gordon is now at the point, I think he's at the stage we can see where he's probably ready for a start. Jacob Murphy's done very well. Listen, he has been fantastic, and I cannot sing his praises enough. He has far exceeded the expectations I had of him before this run of his. Greg, granted, he's not the most clinical. He's not been too involved in many assists. I know he assisted Wilson against West Ham, but he's not quite, clinical enough for probably what we need longer term. So I think now's the time to start Gordon. I think it is. He's shown to be hardworking. He tracks back very well, but he also has that skill, that pace, those dynamics to get in behind defenders and really cause some problems. And I'd really like to see what he can do with Isak up top as well. So yeah, no, I think it's probably about time. Whether he does that or not, whether he starts him or not, who knows? But I would like to see it.
Yeah, who knows indeed. We will find out on Saturday. So before we wrap this one up, boys, let's turn our attention to our predictions. Daryl, I came to you first last week, I think. So Joe, you're up first, mate. What's your predictions for this weekend?
I'm not going to go for a draw because I saw that West Ham. I saw it. No, my gut is telling me this could be a Desmond, but I'm going to trust the lads to get this over the line, as the old Pardew saying goes. I'm going to say that we're going to win this one 2-1.
Nice.
Stormy idea. I was going to go with a 2-1 as well.
On mine.
I'm not
still can.
To, just to blow the trumpet and say who predicted 2-1 against Brentford, but yeah, I would go with 2-1 again as well.
I mean, if you want to blow a trumpet, I predicted 3-2, and it should have been 3-2. The fact that they had a penalty and we had a goal disallowed, but just saying, can't come for VAR in my predictions. That's all I'm going to say.
Pre-VAR.
Yeah,
Pre-VAR.
I think it'll be a very tough game. I think Villa will look out to cause an upset, and I think they may, for most of the game, do that. But I do still think we'll win. I think I'm going to say 2-1 as well. I think they'll score, and I don't think I don't think we'll be able to stop them from scoring, unfortunately. But I think we'll have enough to actually win the game. I think we'll probably go behind first, similar to what happened at Brentford. Not in the performance, but in what happens in the game. But yeah, I'm fully confident in an Eddie Howe half-time team talk, and then coming out and blowing down the hatches and scoring 2 goals. Why not? Does anybody want to add anything before we wrap this one up?
I'll just quickly add, when we were talking about starting Anthony Gordon, I'd love to see Anthony Gordon versus Luca Dean. I'd love it. Yeah. I'd really love it, because I think he could just tear him a new arsehole.
Yeah, we were also talking off camera. It's a pity that Maxi isn't fit because of the Ashley Young situation. Although he's still got a bit of pace in him, I think Maxi could cause him a bit of trouble if he was fit. But we'll find out on Friday if he is fit or not. I wouldn't count any chickens with that one, though, because I think he's been in France all week. So I don't think he's even been training with the lads, even though he's been in his oxygen tank.
But it's nice that we don't necessarily need him. I mean, don't get me wrong, not just him, but any one play. You've got Miggy out as well, and we've won 5 on the bounce. It's class. Yep. It's class that we're getting to bring these players on, and as Daryl said, if we end up bringing Wilson on some point during the game for a 4-4-2, it's a fantastic option to have. It's you can't rely on the same game plan forever. So.
I mean, if we want to send a message to Ashley Young early on, we'll just get Joe Linton to go and twat him.
I was thinking that. Imagine Ashley Young against Joe Linton.
He'd be kicked into bloody the centre of Birmingham from Aston Villa if he did that.
Retire
the Wolves ground Kick him to the Molyneux. Right, thanks boys for this one. It's been a good one as always, and thank you for watching. If you like this sort of content, please scroll down from this video, hit the little thumbs up button. If you don't like it, hit the thumbs down button. I'm guessing if you're a Villa fan, you'll probably scroll down, hit the thumbs down button. Although we have been talking quite nice about you, so throw a bone. If you want to go one step further, you can hit the subscribe button. That'll bring all of our videos into your YouTube feed. And if you want to be notified when that happens, hit the little notification bell and you'll get a little pop-up on whatever device you use to let you know that something has been posted from us. If you want to go one step further, we do have a membership program, $2.99 a month. Gets you early access to a lot of these videos, as well as access to the Telegram group. But boys, this is it. We go on to try and win our 6th game in the row, try and cement our place in that top 4. If it isn't already cemented already, I think maybe the cement's a bit wet. We just need to let it dry a bit. I think that's what's happening now. We'll be brimming with confidence. We've had a full week of recovery and training. Let's hope we can take this game to Aston Villa. And let's hope Robbie Savage isn't commentating on BT Sports. Well, I don't think he does it anymore. But let's hope he's not, because this would be the type of game that they would get him in for. Although it's probably be Steve McManaman, which I don't know if that's much better.
I don't know. It might be Jermaine Genius.
Oh, that's even worse as well. I've never. Can I just say something about Jermaine Genius before wraps up? I've never known a commentator when something happens on screen goes, I can't tell you how good that is. It's like you're a commentator. That's your job. You've got to tell me how good it is.
It's the one thing you're paid to do, son.
Anyways, we will see you in the next one. Thanks everybody for watching.
Cheers all.